G'day, this is Fletch, your presenter of the TV show Classic Restos. It's the show where it's your chance to see completed restorations being shown, driven and enjoyed.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Classic Restos, airing in capital cities around Australia and in New Zealand. Now, on today's show, it is a very special event. So special, in fact, that we're here at Doltone House for the GT Club's first birthday. You know, it doesn't get much better than this. Here in the showroom today at Doltone House, we have an absolutely sensational GT HO Phase 3 XY. We have this absolutely beautiful Phase 2 XW GT, a Phase 1.5 XW GT, and of course a Phase 1 XW GT. But the vista here today would have to be the XT Falcon, driven at Bathurst by Freddie Gibson. Fred, welcome to Classic Restos, mate.
Morning, Fletch. How are you?
Mate, I'm all the better for catching up with you.
Really? No, it's good to be here. You know, when Rob rang and said, can we come up and spend a lunch with you guys, it was something a bit special. And to see all the cars that are here and bring back all the memorabilia, it's pretty special.
Fred, you've got that many runs on the board. I mean, I could talk to you for 5 or 6 hours and then we would have only touched 10%. But Fred, just tell us, what was it like to pound one of these XT Falcons around Mount Panorama, bringing Ford to victory? What was it like racing in those days?
Well, Fletch, I think really look at the era. It was like in the high 60s or 70s, and we probably didn't know much better. And I just thought it was normal. This was a motor car, and you raced a motor car, and I was very lucky to get an opportunity from Harry Firth to drive with him at Bathurst for the first time in a big car, the open class. I'd done Bathurst before in smaller cars. So it was really a privilege to be asked. And I just did my thing and drove the car around, and Harry told me what to do, which people that know Harry, that's what Harry does, tells you what to do and you do exactly what he tells you to do. And we were lucky enough to win the race, which was pretty fantastic. At that time I was probably 19 or 20 years of age or something sort of thing.
It's amazing too to think that these cars that you used to race were really like high-powered cabs, weren't they? I mean, these were family trucksters. I mean, these were standard production cars with a half-healthy V8 engine and sent out onto a racetrack.
Well, I suppose I didn't meet Harry in '67 until I got to Bathurst on the Friday night. I'd never driven the car before that we're going to race, and I said to H, I said, what chance of getting a victory here today or tomorrow? And he said, Fred, there's no substitute for cubic capacity, because then there was the Alphas running and the Minis and those things. And he said, you know, a bit of luck we should win it. And a bit of luck we did, but they were a big, heavy car. But don't forget, back in those days also, you run on road tyres and things like that, so you weren't doing the speeds that, you know, everyone thinks you did sort of thing. So they're pretty hard to drive, and probably looking back on all those sort of cars with the HOs, the Phase 2s and 3s and all those things, I really don't know how we drove them.
Fred, the thing is though, you were coming down Conrod Straight, you had, what, a 185 or a 195 width tyre, 120 miles an hour plus. How did you pull the damn things up to do that left-hander?
Yeah, but Fletch, that wasn't really, you know, it wasn't that quick in those days. Like, the worst part about, in '67, the car was a quick motor car, it was a good motor car, and probably the brakes were adequate for the power it had. You know, it broke well, and the way Harry had the car set up, it wasn't wearing the brake set. I think we changed the brake pads once in the whole race. But the thing is, the cars have got harder to drive with the HOs, because the brakes weren't probably good enough for the performance of the car on a racetrack.
Did they ever scare you?
No, because you're young, Fletch. When I drove back then, you were young, and you thought, this is fantastic. And no, it never scared you, because that's all you got used to. There was nothing better than that. like to drive around Bathurst in a HO Falcon Phase 3, like Alan and I and Johnny French and those sorts of people, they were just like, you know, this was the best form of motor racing. But see, the HO has become the cult car to have it, and the Monaras come along, and here we go into power. And that's what they started doing all the time with the HOs, but then that's when you start breaking things too. I remember the HOs used to crack wheels pretty easily, sort of thing, so you start the race with all fresh wheels, all new wheels, because the wheels would crack. And, you know, people didn't know those sorts of things. And the brakes, you know, you had to put up with the brakes the whole race. But, like, things that really sort of, you look back on it now, the steering was so heavy because you had no power steering. And it's so heavy a car. And, like, I don't know how you ever drove one, because I drove some road HOs around the streets sort of thing, because I was looking after the Ford press cars in Sydney, my own business then back in those days, and the HO on the road was just a monster of a car. But a heavy steering, a big clunky gearbox because there's a top loader and all those sorts. It was a big heavy car to drive. And I must give Alan Moffat credit, because like Alan really mastered those cars very well. He could master cars, just knew how much throttle he'd put on the car so the wheels wouldn't wheel spin, because you could light the tyres out of any time. And I suppose that's what I'm a bit famous for, a bit flamboyant, sideways, smoking back tyres and those sorts of things. And those are the sort of things you could do without giving it too much throttle, because that's the power you had.
Fred, back in the day too, there were never really a lot of driver changes either, were there?
Oh no, you'd drive right through. It's a 500k race, you'd drive the whole race yourself. And so the thing is, like, those sorts of things, you know, the early GTs weren't too bad. They were pretty reasonable to drive all day. But the HOs, they were hard work to drive all day. And that's probably like, you know, to do a 500k race in the HO was really draining, really draining. And then when it went to the longer distance race, so then that's where you needed, you know, multiple drivers really.
Keep in mind too, you could get a brand new GT for $4.5 grand, but there were parts of Sydney in the west where you could get a house for $9 grand.
Oh, it's absolutely. But they sold as many as they could sell, the HOs. They were selling like hotcakes. And I suppose that was an era where I look back on now and think that's where I started my career.
Well, Fred, you say you don't have any memorabilia for all the years. Well, I'll tell you, there's one thing you've got today, and that's an interview with Fletch on Classic Restos, mate.
Thanks very much, Fletch. Appreciate it. And let's hope we have a good day here today at the Ford GT Club.
Absolutely. We're looking at 5-star. We've got 3-course lunch on today, so you must be looking forward to that too, are you, Fred?
Yes, I am. Especially Rob rang me and said, could I come up? And I said, Chris and I come up from Melbourne, and we're looking forward to it greatly. It'll be a good day.
See, this is what it's all about, eh? How good is that of Fred to come up from Victoria here to just south of Sydney for the GT Club's first birthday. Good on you, Fred, and it's been an absolute pleasure interviewing you on the show, mate.
Thanks, Fletch. Thanks very much. Pleasure being here.
OK, stick around, because after the break, we've got more classic Fords here at Dalton House on Classic Restos. Welcome back. The GT Club President, Rob. Mate, what a sensational day so far, my friend.
Thank you, Fletch. I'm glad you could make it to the first birthday of the GT Club. Newly formed club, catering for GT Falcons. We've got a different spin on things. We do 67 to 76 GT Falcons, but we also include a class called a Tribute class. Now, the Tribute class is essentially replica GTs done to a certain standard. Our first outing was at MotorX. We won Best Display at MotorX, and we were only allowed 8 cars there. We'll have 15 cars at MotorX this year. And like, we've had events. Our club patron is Fred Gibson. His wife, Christine Cole, is still the most renowned female race driver in this country's history. We've got Bobby Skelton as an honorary member, Bruce McPhee as an honorary member, Harry Firth as a life member. You know, like, the list just keeps on growing of people that want to be associated. And the secret of this club is that if you can involve the family, the children, the wives, if you can make the women friends and the children yearn to be with each other, you have a recipe for success, and that's exactly what we are.
Well, I know one thing, mate. There's a 5-star lunch waiting for you, big fella, so I better let you go and have a bite, eh?
No problem. Thank you kindly.
Right. One of the fastest ladies in motorsport back in the late 60s, Christine Cole. Welcome to Classic Restos.
Thank you, Fletch. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to interview you because, Chris, I've seen you on the black and white highlight videos of the Bathurst days. You really pedalled a mean circuit around there. Tell us, what was it like for a lady or a young girl in those days getting into such a professional sport?
I think I was probably the first of the lucky ones where sponsorship was just starting to creep into motorsport. So I was a bit of a gimmick in those days. It was sort of, they used me, and it helped bring some money in. But it was very difficult. You had to be dedicated, and I hoped that I was, and I tried very hard to be. I worked 3 jobs at one stage to try and get enough money to go motor racing. It was difficult.
You were a hard worker and a toiler in the time. Apparently, the 3 jobs that you had, now that was just to put tyres on the car, yes?
That was. I never actually owned a race car of my own in those days. I raced a car belonging to John Leffler, who was a very prominent race car driver, and he had a lot of success and still did. He had a couple of cars over the years, different sports sedan cars, and I raced his cars for him. But, you know, it was nice to be able to help put tyres on cars when that was necessary.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, formerly Christine Cole, and then turning into Christine Gibson.
Yeah, well...
So met Fred at the track?
We did.
What's the story there?
Well, we met at Bathurst, actually, and that was in 1972, and then and we were married a couple of years later, and the story goes on from there.
Any friendly rivalry over the years? Was there any competition between the both of you? Chris, tell us, what year did you start racing, and also tell us the types of cars that you drove whilst your racing career was right on top, so to speak.
I actually started racing in 1967 in ladies' races at Oran Park. And then from there I drove Fiat, I drove Alfa Romeo, I drove for the Holden dealer team in XU1s. I then later drove Nissans in the 80s, and I rallied Ford Escorts, and I rallycrossed cars. I rallycrossed in a sort of a hybrid Cooper, Mini Cooper, and I've included in all that were hill climbs, and so I've probably run the gamut of most of the motorsport fields. The only thing I never did was drive an open wheeler.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Chris, you're a bit of a speedy lady, aren't you? Where did you get it from?
Family's always been interested. Actually, my dad courted my mother with a motorbike, and I believe that the grandparents were so horrified that he then had to go and get a sidecar because they didn't like mum on the back of the motorbike. Yeah, I think it's just in the family.
Well, Chris, lovely talking to you today. It's such an honour to have you on the show.
Thank you, Fletch. It's been a pleasure being here.
That's right. Oh, before you go, tell me something. Do you like cuddles?
I do like cuddles.
You do? You better give me one.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Cheers.
Here we have 2 absolutely sensational XW GT Falcons. Now, we have a Phase 1 and a Phase 1.5. Now, experts will be able to explain the differences between these 2 cars. But in layman's terms, the Phase 1, this was car 15 of a Windsor-powered V8 engine. The Phase 1.5 was, of course, the introduction of the Cleveland 351 V8. You know, the talent just keeps on flowing here at Dalton House for the GT Club's first birthday. With me now, Bob Skelton. Bob, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Fletch. Thank you very much.
Now, Bob, I want to know, tell us your fondest memories of Bathurst, or in fact any race circuit of the late 60s and 70s.
Well, I suppose Bathurst was sort of one of the main events that really gives you the thrill. and I had 16 Bathursts, and I had a lot of fun every time I drove at Bathurst. I drove with the Brock and Bond team in 1974. That was very exciting. My first race ever at Bathurst was in 64 in an E.H. Holden. And then, of course, I had the glory of driving these Falcons, 1970, 1971 and 1973. But I suppose my biggest thrill was when I won the Driver to Europe. And that was in 1972, and that was very exciting. I'd sort of come second the year before to Larry Perkins in the same drive in Formula Ford. But my motor racing sort of went over 23 years, and I was very lucky that I didn't have any major accidents, and I was lucky enough probably to win quite a few events that I went in.
Bob, you guys are the veterans. You know, this is where the hat comes off. You guys, a tremendous amount of respect. Motor racing today wouldn't be where it is without all the effort that you pioneers, I guess in some respect, kicked off the sport. You did it in cars that were production cars from the factory showrooms.
Yep.
The old, race on Sundays, sell on Mondays.
That's right.
And Bob, tell me, what was your first experiences of getting into a Phase 3? What was your first thoughts when you had an opportunity to race one of those cars?
Well, the XW in 1970, I drove with John Goss, and I must admit, we adapted ourselves in those days to the problems that happened with the cars, such as, the brakes. You had to look after the car. Whereas today they seem to be pretty foolproof. They seem to get in. I know I had the opportunity of driving one of Larry's cars about 5 years ago, which I hadn't driven for many, many years, since 1983, on a racetrack. And I drove one of his cars, and truly, totally foolproof. Just use the brakes whenever you want to use them, and they're always there. And it's like driving a road car around the suburbs.
One line that Resty's soul, Peter Brock, said back in '85 that driving the GTS Monaro was like one gigantic compromise.
Yes, it's so true. So true. But I think the relationship that you had with your motor racing career in those days was fantastic, because you've got to love the car because you had to baby it, look after it. You got to, you spoke to your opposition as mates. Yeah. You're all mates. And it was just a good atmosphere. And car racing in general was a good atmosphere.
Well, it represented a time where it wasn't money-driven, it was more passion-driven, wasn't it?
Passion-driven, for sure, yeah. And, I must admit, I didn't have much trouble coming out of a Ford into a Holden, or originally I drove Minis at Bathurst for the factory and what have you, so it was pretty serious stuff, and Cooper S's. So we had a passion for all the different brands, and today I'd sort of still have the passion for the different brands. And if I can do anything to help the GT club with any of their social events or anything, I'm here. I don't think I can go out and win Bathurst in one of their GT Falcons.
When you look around the showroom here today, well, I call it a showroom. This is the closest thing you'd ever get to.
Get to a showroom.
Yeah, walking into the dealership back in the day and ordering your brand new Falcon. This is what it looks like here today.
Yes.
Bob, what does it feel like for you to see these cars in here?
Well, I think it's lovely, actually, because of the quality of them. The cars are absolutely immaculate, pristine, I suppose. And it's just lovely to see them all on display like they are. Yes, it's the only other times you see something like this is at a motor show, or that's a special event. But this has been a great honour to come here today to see all this.
Well, it's been great chatting with you, Bob.
I tell you what, one honour I have got is for many, many years I have been waiting to be interviewed by Fletch. And I'll tell you what, I don't know why I could have won the lottery today.
Geez, I tell you,
But thank you very much.
No doubt about you, Bob. Thank you very much, mate, and a pleasure, likewise. Thank you. Well, there you have it. I hope you've really enjoyed this very special episode of Classic Restos. Now, if you're the proud owner of a GT, why not contact the club? They're lovely people, they invite families, they're a very close-knit club, very family-orientated, and it really represents what the fraternity is about. For more details, go to the website www.thegtclubinc.com. I'm Fletch, thank you for watching.